Chapter 19. Going Out in a Blaze. Not long after Lonetta fell into the cellar hole, Daddy poured a concrete roof over the cellar. The roof to the cellar was actually at ground level, with the Frady hole beneath it. It made a nice patio in the backyard. He built an enclosure, a little house, with a slanted roof over the steps, creating protection from the weather. As a person went down the steps to the cellar from the storage room, he could be completely inside and out of the weather. Daddy put wooden shingles on top of this little house and threatened us kids with whippings if he ever caught us playing on the slanted roof. The problem was that the slanted roof was only about 8 inches off the ground at the lowest end and slanted up to the roof of the garage at the highest end. That was a big problem for us kids. It made it so easy to walk up to the garage roof, and from there we easily got on the roof of the house. Of course, we could go anywhere we wanted to on that roof. The slanted roof over the cellar stairs was just too much temptation. We tried not to let Daddy catch us. The house had 2 very high, slanted gables running up to high peaks. In fact, the highest peak created the ceiling above our bedroom stairs. There were no attics above those bedrooms. Daddy threatened to whoop us if we played on the roof. We tried not to let Daddy catch us. And boy, we did a lot of fun stuff on that roof. My brother and sisters, cousins, and neighborhood friends have all been on that roof at one time or another. We tried not to let Daddy catch us. One game we played was Paratrooper. Someone was the enemy, armed with a Red Rover ball. The good guys, the rest of us, ran up the slanted roof above the cellar steps and hopped onto the roof of the garage. The good guys kept moving up the garage roof and down the front side of that roof. The enemy's job was to throw the ammunition ball at the good guys before they could scramble down the front side and parachute to the ground in front of the garage. If one of the good guys got hit, he would have to be the enemy until he hit a good guy. We tried not to let Daddy catch us. Sometimes we just climbed to the tallest peak of the roof and then slide on our butts down to the V formed between the 2 peaks. Other times we would just sit in the V between the 2 peaks and tell stories to each other or talk. My sister Phyllis and her friend Anita Calico would sit up there for hours talking like teenage girls do. Tommy and I and our friends just ran around them. We tried not to let Daddy catch us. As we got a little older, Tommy and I spent less time climbing trees, playing in the yard, and on the roof. Tommy and I made a little money because by the summer he was 12 and I was almost 14. We both worked at Clyde's Cafe in Cheney. I worked waiting tables and Tommy worked in the kitchen. But school and work did not keep us from having fun. Tommy and I started a collection of model cars. We spent hours and hours and hours up in our rooms gluing the models together and pasting racy decals on the hoods, doors, and fenders. We had quite a collection. Model cars sat on every available surface in both of our rooms. Sometimes we worked downstairs at the dining room table. Eventually, we had so many cars, we had to wait on the model manufacturer to come out with a new model. And then we'd beg Mama and Daddy to take us into Woolworth's 5 and Dime in Wichita so we could buy the latest beauty. One day we realized that the model car selections were running out on us, and we decided to switch to model airplanes. So on the next trip to town, we bought a couple model airplane kits. We spent several hours putting those 2 together, and we were very happy with them. But a problem came up. We didn't have any place to put the finished airplanes. What were we going to do? One Saturday afternoon in summer, Mama and Daddy had gone into Wichita to do their bi-weekly grocery shopping, and Tommy came up with a brilliant idea. We put all of the model cars into 2 large cardboard boxes. We took a 4th of July punk, a tube of airplane glue, some rope, and a box of kitchen matches, and we went up onto the roof. We hauled those boxes, our supplies and ourselves, to the highest peak of the roof. We sat astraddle the highest peak, like riding a horse. We tied the 2 boxes up there so they wouldn't slide. And then the fun began. We lit that 4th of July punk. We put a dab of airplane glue on the hood or roof of one of the cars. When we touched the lighted punk to the airplane glue, it burst into flame. Then we released the car and let it roll down the north gable of the roof, and it launched itself into the neighbor's dirt driveway next door. After each launch, Tommy and I would scream and yell to celebrate our victory. As usual, he and I found a way to make this a competition. We started launching the model cars one at a time. He would light a glob of glue on the hood of one of the cars and send it down the roof. We sat and watched it fly into the neighbor's dirt driveway. We celebrated, whooping and hollering, and then it was my turn. I lit one and launched it. Burning as it rolled down the roof, flew and fell into the driveway. Between each launch, we argued about whose car flew the furthest. We weren't up there very long before several of the kids in the neighborhood heard us hollering from up there on the roof. They came running as fast as they could to see what the fun was all about. Pretty soon, we had 10 or 12 friends down there in the driveway, cheering us on and dodging the burning missiles. I remember Gary and Terry both were there. Their family lived in the house where the dirt driveway was. Mrs. Voth, Imogene, came out of her house and hollered, "You kids better come down from there. Somebody's going to get hurt." Colita Golden came from our neighbor's house on the south. The Vanderhoff brothers, who were visiting their grandma that summer, came from down the street. Philip Dudley came running from a block away. Of course, my sisters Phyllis and Lonetta ran out of our house, bringing 5-year-old Marla with them. I don't remember who else was there, but there was a crowd of 10 or 12 kids. They were cheering us on and dodging our launched and flaming model cars. It was a glorious day. I don't remember how long Tommy and I had been sitting astraddle of that roof peak, sending those burning cars down the roof gable to launch into the neighbor's driveway. I also don't remember how long Mama and Daddy had been gone into Wichita buying groceries. Whatever time it wasn't long enough. They came home before we had launched all of our cars. We were right in the middle of our fun. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Daddy come around the north side of the house and slide to a screeching halt in the middle of our group of friends. Gulp. "Hi, Daddy," I shouted and waved like an idiot, hoping my cheerfulness would distract him. "Hiya, Daddy-o," Tommy yelled. Daddy was speechless and stood there with his mouth hanging open. I finally heard him yell, "Donnis Arlene, Thomas Eugene, you get down from there now." I would like to say that when we came off the roof, Daddy had calmed down, but I cannot say that. If anything, Daddy was angrier. Tommy slid down the slanted roof over the cellar steps first. Daddy caught him by the arm and started whaling his butt. I thought I had a chance to get away, but I didn't. Daddy reached out with his long arm and grabbed me as I came down that roof. He looked right at me and said, "Young lady, you park yourself right there." I had to stand there and watch while Tommy got his whipping. Then it was my turn. Lots of times before, Daddy had congratulated us on a job well done by patting us on our backs. Well, he patted us this time too, but the pats were much harder and quite a bit lower than our backs. I don't think I sat down comfortably for a week. Daddy had caught us. Chapter 20. Want a pickle? The entire time I was growing up, Daddy grew a vegetable garden. There was always plenty of fresh food to eat during the spring, summer, and into the fall. Daddy planted his garden out behind his shed and next to the alley. Every evening, after work, and just as the sun was going down, I heard him say, "You kids go water the garden and pull the weeds." I didn't mind it. It was fun being outside, and watering with the hose was almost like playing. Lots of times I liked to sneak a ripe tomato off the vine, sit in the dirt to rest, wipe the dirt off the tomato, take that first juicy bite, and keep eating until it was gone. They were so good straight from the vine. Mama canned everything from Daddy's garden. It was a big job and kept her busy for the entire summer. Her canned goods were delicious, and she put up enough that we ate fresh vegetables all during the winter. When springtime came around the next year, they would start over, Daddy planting and Mama canning. We picked the vegetables as they ripened and hauled them into the kitchen. Mama would generally cook something from the garden as we brought it in. Most nights she sliced tomatoes and green onions for us. Mama liked to eat an onion like most of us eat apples. She would clean off the outer peel and just take a big old bite out of the onion. Sometimes she would steam fresh green beans, adding in onions and a slice or two of bacon. Mama could make lots of yummy, fresh dishes out of the things we picked out of the garden. Most of the vegetables were set aside to be canned, which she did within a day or two of bringing them into the house. Before the summer was over, we had jars and jars of canned vegetables to store for the winter. One of my favorites was Mama's sour pickles that she made from the ripe cucumbers. I know most of my family liked the dill pickles as well. Whenever we would go to share a meal with family or friends, Mama would take a quart of dill pickles to share. Daddy loved them. I remember times he would sneak into the kitchen, distract Mama for a little bit, and reach around her to open one of the jars and grab a pickle that she had just canned. She would slap at him playfully and say, "Now you go on, get out of my kitchen. If you don't stop, we won't have any left for the winter." That never seemed to stop him from stealing pickles for very long. When we were little, we couldn't do very much, but Mama still gave us little chores to do, like washing the vegetables and even washing the quart jars before they went into the scalding bath. Once the canning was done for the day, she would have us carry the cooled quart jars one by one out to the little storage room behind the garage. This room housed the washing machine and a big double-door freezer. We didn't have a dryer. Daddy cut a door on the west side of the little storage room so we could go from the storage room right out into the backyard where the clothesline was. On two walls of the storage room, Daddy built some shelves specifically for the canned jars of vegetables. Before the gardening season was over, we had rows and rows of canned goods that Mama had worked so hard to preserve. Daddy grew potatoes and onions in his garden. I loved it when Mama would fry up those onions and potatoes in a pan of sizzling Crisco. On Sunday at noon, we usually had a big meal of chicken or roast or ham. So on Sunday nights, our evening meal usually consisted of brown beans, fried potatoes, and cornbread. Now that is some good eating. I remember a lot of the fresh foods, including vegetables that Mama fried. No one was worried about their weight, and we hadn't even heard of such a thing as cholesterol. One Sunday evening, Tommy got into trouble. Now, I don't have a single childhood memory that my brother Tommy isn't in, and most of my memories are fun and make me smile when I remember them. But there were times when I wanted to wring his neck. One week, when he was about 8, he kept following me around and repeating everything I said, and everything that was said to me. His foolishness finally caught up to him that Sunday evening. Mommy and Daddy had been hearing him mock me. He was relentless, and his mocking was so tedious, they finally got fed up with it. I had been complaining, asking Mama and Daddy to make him stop. This is the way I remember the events. Daddy said, "That's enough, Donnis. Hush up your whining." "That's enough, Donnis. Hush up your whining," Tommy sang out. "Now cut that out," I yelled back at him. "Now cut that out," he yelled back. I hated this new game of his, repeating everything I said. He was really driving me crazy. "Pass the salt, please," I said to Mama. "Pass the salt, please," Tommy repeated, laughing. I pushed back my chair. "I can't take it anymore. I mean it," I cried. "Do something, will you?" But he was already at it. "I cannot take it anymore. I mean it. Do something, will you?" My face turned red. I was so mad. Tommy laughed so hard, he choked. He couldn't get his breath, and he kept choking and coughing. Daddy saw that he was in trouble. He grabbed Tommy, turned him upside down, and whacked him hard on his back. Daddy shook Tommy, holding him by his ankles, and upside down he kept whacking him. Tommy finally was able to catch his breath, and so Daddy set him back upright on the floor. "I want you to stop doing that, Tommy. Leave Donnis alone," Daddy said. "Do you understand me?" Frankly, I didn't understand why my parents always asked Tommy if he understood what they were saying. Of course he understood. That never had anything to do with it. Tommy nodded as Daddy continued. "Because if you don't stop repeating everything Donnis says, I'm going to whack you a lot harder and make it so you won't be able to sit down for a week. Get it?" Daddy glared. I couldn't help grinning. Tommy had finally gotten into trouble. But from then on, his repeating got to be less frequently, and he was very careful not to do it in front of Mama and Daddy. The next day, Mama was working in the kitchen canning cucumbers into pickles. She sliced some of them to make dill pickle chips, but mostly she canned them halved or quartered and sometimes whole. She bought a 10-pound bag of dill, opened the top of the bag, and stored the big bag on the floor of the garage, just outside the dining room. The dill was a white, powdery mix. Daddy bought a 30-gallon bag of cement for his cellar. He opened the top of the bag and stored the big bag on the floor of the garage, just outside the dining room. The cement was a very light gray, powdery mix. Mama needed a cup of dill for each batch of pickles she canned. When she was ready, she sent Tommy out to the garage with a measuring cup to get a cup of the dill directly from the bag. When she got her first batch done, Mama put one of the jars into the icebox. That's what Daddy called the refrigerator, so it would cool. Daddy loved Mama's dill pickles and wanted to have them as soon as possible. Mama had been canning for about 3 weeks. It was hard work. All the canned pickles were safely stored away on the shelves Daddy built in the storage room, except for the one jar in the refrigerator. Mama told him to wait so that the pickling process could be complete, but Daddy was impatient. He got the pickle jar out of the refrigerator. He wanted a good, sour dill pickle. He took a huge bite out of the pickle and gagged. "Mommy," he said, "I think this jar didn't get a good seal or something, and the pickles have gone bad." Mama grabbed another pickle out of the jar and took a bite. Then she gagged. "Yuck," she said. I wonder what could be wrong. "Phyllis, go get another jar off the shelf in the storage room." Phyllis hopped up from the table, went to the storage room, and brought another jar of pickles to the kitchen. Daddy opened that jar. He gingerly took a little bite of pickle and spit the pickle in the sink. June, I'm sorry to tell you, but this jar is bad too. Mama sent Phyllis back to the storage room and Daddy went with her. They each brought 2 jars of pickles back to the kitchen. Mama and Daddy opened all 4 jars and tasted a pickle from each jar. They were all bad. Daddy said, "Whatever is on these pickles tastes grainy. I just wonder." He didn't finish his comment. He went into the garage and there on the floor sat those 2 bags of powdery mix side by side. He hollered at Tommy, "Son, come out here." When Tommy reached the garage, Daddy pointed to the 2 sacks and asked, "When your mama sent you out here to get dill, which bag did you get the mix from?" Tommy pointed to the cement bag. Mama said, "Max, I think we can save them, but we have to work fast. Follow me." Mama took 2 jars of cucumbers and Daddy grabbed 2 jars and followed her into the bathroom. They dumped all 4 jars into the bathtub and started running cold water into the tub to rinse the cement off the cucumbers. Daddy and all of us kids formed a human train back and forth from the storage garage to the bathroom. Mama kept saying, "Hurry, hurry. We've got to get that cement off those cucumbers before they set up into concrete." Mama sat on the edge of the bathtub, and each time one of us would bring her a jar, she would empty the cucumbers into the bathtub, hand the jar back to us to take to the kitchen. When we were finished, cucumbers filled more than halfway up the sides of the bathtub. Then Mama and Daddy got to work. They took their shoes off, climbed into the bathtub, and stood among the pickles in the bathtub. They ran fresh water and rinsed and rinsed, and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed, and rinsed and rinsed. When they thought they had gotten all the cement off those cucumbers, Daddy got a couple of buckets and hauled as many cucumbers as would fit into the big kitchen sink. Mama had to work fast, scalding the jars again and then canning the cucumbers. She sent Phyllis north to our neighbors, the Voths, and me south to our neighbors, the Goldens, asking to borrow their big cooking pots. Mama began using 4 big pots, 2 scalding the canning jars, and 2 processing the cucumbers, dill mix, garlic, vinegar, and salt. She kept all 4 burners on the stove busy. This time she made sure she was using the dill mix. She worked long hours in the kitchen canning all of those pickles over the next 4 days. Daddy made sure we had food so Mama did not have to stop to prepare a meal. Nothing was cooked. Mama needed her stove for canning. We ate sandwiches and cereal for 4 days. Finally, when she was done with the jars full of pickles sealed and stored out in the storage room again, she said to Daddy, "Well, hold your breath and say a prayer. I don't know how they're going to turn out." Daddy waited for about 3 weeks to let the pickles ferment in the dill. One evening he went to the storage room, grabbed a jar, and brought it into the kitchen. Mama and us kids stood around watching him and awaiting the verdict. Daddy broke the seal on that canning jar and took out a pickle. He took a very small bite off the end of the pickle. He chewed it carefully. Then he took a bigger bite and then another bite. It wasn't too long before he had eaten the whole pickle, and he said, "Mommy, I think you've done it. I think these are the best pickles I have ever tasted." From that day to this, my family calls any dill pickle a cement pickle, even though that summer's harvest is long gone. When we gather around a dinner table, you'll hear one of us say, "Hey, pass me the cement pickles." Every one of my brothers and sisters swear that year's canned pickles were the best pickles Mama had ever canned. June Bugs and Summer's Nights. Heart Stories from the Midwest. Copyright 2022. Written by Donnis Slusser Crane. Narrated by Donnis Slusser Crane. I've been telling stories since the age of 3, and I'm happy to have published the books of my father, Max, brother Tommy, and sister Lonetta Slusser Knutson. All of our books are published through Amazon and Kindle. www.amazon.com/author/Donnis Crane.